Hello everybody. In Skyrim, Bethesda kind of went back to, giving each city a bit of a backstory, and even went as far as adding some history on the walls of cities and other places. So you could walk past the wall and read about, certain things. And this made these cities a lot more interesting to enter. It gave you a feel of the culture that you were surrounded by and immersed you in the game a lot more than you would have been in Oblivion, which just didn't do that. They did in Morrowind to a degree. You got that feeling from Vivek City in Morrowind, and to a lesser degree, other areas. But Skyrim really did perfect it. When I play Skyrim, I'm absorbed by that. I get into that aspect of the game. And I wanted you to be able to share that same feeling I get when I'm playing Skyrim with whatever character I've generated. So I've focused on three major cities for now. There's Markarth, there's Solitude, and there's going to be Windhelm as well. Now I might do Winterhold, but most of that fell into the sea, but it's still an interesting backstory, so maybe I'll do that. But there's a lot of backstory came from the Morrowind game, and it explains things about the way things were in Skyrim, because they were constantly fighting. The elves and the Nords were constantly fighting. So a lot of the stuff for Skyrim was explained in that game and then used in Skyrim and expanded upon. And as a consequence, if you know the lore from Morrowind, you get a massive update to it once you start playing Skyrim. And I found that interesting. I found the whole thing fascinating. So I decided I'd delve into it a little bit by just looking at the cities and the history. Now, as you know, the Wolf Queen, Potema Septim, she's the daughter of Plagueis II, not to be confused with Plagueis the Mad. She resided in Solitude and was responsible for the War of the Red Diamond. That's a civil war between Septims, basically. So that and Solitude, that's a bit of history. She's also a bit of a necromancer. And, so there's a whole aspect to that just makes you see Solitude in a different light. Also, if she did come back from the dead, then she would be the only living Septim and heir to the Septim throne. Says the current emperor would be seen as would be cast aside, and we'd have an evil queen in charge of the empire. So it is quite an interesting thing, and Bethesda, they made use of that story. They knew that story would be interesting. They made use of it in order to create a more depth in the Solitude story, in the Solitude area, and in the game itself. The Greybeards, they used to feature quite heavily in various books from Morrowind. And they're explained again. The mystery behind the Greybeards is explained, so we understand that. So again, they drew upon the Morrowind backstories in order to make Skyrim work. It says, and then you got Windhelm, the oldest human city in Tamriel, probably. Definitely the oldest in Skyrim. It's home of Harold and Orolf One-Eye and many others. Son of Yorgos, whatever his name is, the original Nord that came across with his companions. And it says Harold established the Skyrim for the Nords. That's got a history in its own right. And I mean, you couldn't get much more deep, hardened Nordic culture than what happens in the east of Skyrim. From Windhelm all the way down to Winterhold, or Winterhold all the way down to Windhelm. So there's an awful lot of rich lore and culture there. And when you're walking through the game and you don't know this culture, you're missing out on half of the fun. For instance, right, if you were a Nord, you wanted to play a Nord character, the Nords aren't necessarily racist, but they're really proud of their own culture and they don't want it watered down. So you'd play a true Nord, you'd go to Windhelm, you'd probably use the house there as your player home. You wouldn't necessarily join the Stormcloaks, but that would be your home. Says, whereas if you're more of an elfy character, you'd probably go to Solitude and you'd probably stay there, because these are the kind of things that fit. For me, when I used to play Dwemer, Dumner, I used to go to Windhelm and I'd be based in there. And then I'd go, most of the time, I'd go over to Solstheim and places like that. So that kind of immersed me in the game more, made me feel like it was part of the world and I fitted into that world. But these city videos I'm making right now are all designed to make that gameplay of yours a little bit more immersive. So when you enter a city, you understand the history and the culture of that city, so you can feel what the locals would have felt. Now, I know it's a computer game, but that extra bit of detail, that extra layer, always adds to the gameplay, in my opinion. It makes the game that little bit better. And in Skyrim, Bethesda pretty much got it right. They really nailed it on the head. You've got a rich, lore-based game which drew most of its information from the Morrowind game, expanded upon it, and added an extra layer we call dragons. So you see. Also, it might explain some of the tombs you see kicking around the world, which might have just been random tombs to you beforehand, but now make a lot more sense. Because the companions, Numanax, the dragon that was held in Windhelm, it's all part of the story of these cities. And if you watch these videos, you'll see exactly what I mean. See you in the next one.